So yes, thank you for your attention. I would like to talk about the cross-border recognition of familial ties within the European Union with the view on rainbow families and recent efforts to change the dilemma, because we have a lot of problems in cross-border situations. But at first, I would like to make a little introduction in what we are, what NELFA is. This is the network of European LGBTIQ families associations, founded in 2009 and registered as a non-profit organization in 2012, means NELFA just turned 10 years old. We have currently 43 organizations within the network, representing 33 European countries, so beyond the European Union. And we represent approximately 10,000 children, but this is just an estimation. What we do is, well, mostly visibility work still. Yes, rainbow families show off to be there in this world and to be real in the media, in political talks and so on. Among the membership, it's the exchange of news about legislative proposals, about studies, scientific research. We share best practice examples from many countries. And these two things, visibility work and the exchange of information, is of course the very big part of advocacy work as well on national levels, yes, with our member organizations, but also at European level. We, as a little board of NELFA with actually 11 board members on a voluntary basis, try to make us visibility on the European level at the institutions and other stakeholders. And this seminar today is, of course, one of these occasions to talk about rainbow families. We do some capacity building with EU-funded projects like Erasmus+, and we give some legal support for those who ask NELFA for help. For example, in cross-border situations, we try to connect people with lawyers or national organizations who might help better than us as a little board. So our mission, to summarize it, is advancing the rights of rainbow families across Europe with a specific view on children's rights. This is our main perspective. And one really important thing that we are talking about is the freedom of movement of rainbow families. What is a rainbow family? This is also, I think, good to mention here, because sometimes we might have other meanings about a rainbow family. Well, the very first definition is, for us, at least one partner. So we are talking also about rainbow couples without children, but also about parents who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, intersex, or queer. This is the typical acronym. Yes, we are always talking about LGBTIQ. Here it is again with a little asterisk at the end to include all possibilities beyond these letters. And all these letters have their own story, their own history, their own problems, their own advantages and disadvantages. This is why we are taking care of all these letters. The relationships are quite diverse. Yes, in the media coverage, it might be that we are mostly talking about same-sex couples, but of course we have a lot of single parents. We have multi-parenting constellations. We have even heterosexual unions, because if you look at least at the paper, you see a man and a woman, but the man might be bisexual, yes, or the woman might be a trans person or an intersex person. So sometimes rainbow families exist without the people knowing about it and don't see it right at the beginning. The parental journeys are mostly planned. So rainbow family by coincidence is relatively, well, not impossible, but mostly they are planned. but different. Yes, here again, sexual intercourse, home insemination, fostering, adoption, assisted reproductive techniques. So it is not exclusively for rainbow families. Of course, this touches a lot of families, the full rainbow of families. But here we still need to see that there are very different forms of families as well, and a lot of different difficulties to become parents. And what is also necessary to know is that parenthood goes beyond biological links. A lot of rainbow families, have this biological link, at least for one person, but the social partner, the co-partner, is sometimes not biologically linked. And here's the question, if these families are also protected. The systems mostly know biological links. Yes, you have a father and you have a mother, but sometimes the father is, just in brackets, a sperm donor, and who is not taking care of the child. So for us, it's more important also to look at the functional families, who is really responsible for the child on an everyday basis, who is the primary carer, and those people need also their protection and their recognition for the best interests of the child. But what is the legal situation? You can imagine, yes, the situation is not so good for many rainbow families in Europe, but there are very often very big differences. The very first and best overview is given by ILGA. ILGA is the umbrella organization for LGBTIQ people in Europe and Central Asia, and they launch every May a new Rainbow Europe map, or it is a package. Yes, it is a map. You see here on the left, there is the general map of human rights standards in legislation in Europe, in the European countries. And the greener the countries are, the better is the situation for LGBTIQ people. And red countries are the countries where a lot of problems still exist. And on the right, you see the map of family rights. So one of these sections in the map is about family rights. And here, the darker the orange is, the better is the situation. But it might be better to look at the second point that is also mentioned in this package. This is the country ranking. And the country ranking is about family rights here. And you see, yes, how much these countries differ from each other. Belgium, Malta on the top with 100%. 100% means here the points that are mentioned in the list. Of course, there are still problems that exist also for rainbow families, but those topics are all covered in these countries that are relevant for rainbow families, Sweden, Netherlands. So you see there are a lot of countries where the situation is quite good when it comes to rights, but we have still a range of countries where the situation is, yellow or red. And you see, we have even countries without any recognition of familial ties, of partnership or parenthood rights when it comes to the acronym LGBTIQ. This is something I really like to talk about too much. So if I get too long here, just stop me and say, perhaps it's better to skip the slide away, because I really like to dive into the details of differences between the countries. But this time, we don't have so much time to talk about this because I have other things to mention better. But still, you have a look here at the different points of the Rainbow Europe map that are mentioned in the section family. So it's about partnership rights, yes, marriage equality, civil unions. And so you see here, the green countries are those who offer marriage equality, half of the countries within the European Union. The situation for civil unions is already much better, but we still see the lack of those countries who haven't that possibility, who haven't that instrument. And there are still 6 countries within the European Union who don't provide any of this partnership rights. And these are Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, Bulgaria, and Romania. So these countries don't have the possibility for same-sex people or LGBTIQ people in general to have their partnership registered. And then we come to the points on the right. So parenthood rights. Joint adoption comes always with marriage equality. So when you can get married, you have the right to adopt jointly. The only country which provides joint adoption without marriage equality is right now Andorra. Second parent adoption, this is the classic stepchild adoption, yes, after a divorce and you have a new partner, and then the new partner can become a legal parent to your child. But it's also a vehicle for those constellations. For example, a lesbian couple goes to a clinic for medical treatment to become parents. And so the woman who gives birth is then the person who will be the first mother. But the second mother has also the possibility to become a legal parent through adoption. So in many countries, this is the possibility to become a family. The direct recognition, so this is the slide. I don't know if you can see it also behind, well, in my case, it is here behind the window where I'm talking. So the direct recognition is something that straight couples know because it's about parental presumption. Yes, if you are married, your children are your children. Yes, you are considered to be the legal parents if you are married. And this direct recognition in some countries is also available for same-sex couples, but for example, in countries like Germany, not. So same-sex couples need to undergo this adoption procedure that might take 2 years even, and is quite difficult for the whole family because you need always those meetings with the authorities and so on, even if you are parent from the beginning, yes? So if you are in a clinic and you become parents, then you are parents to your child. So we have those possibilities right now, but only in some countries. And you see here a majority of countries still don't have the possibility of a direct recognition. This comes with parental presumption or with a certain acknowledgement in a clinic, for example, for lesbian couples, if they go to a clinic and then become jointly parents. This has also to do, and this is then on the left side, MAR means assisted insemination for same-sex couples or assisted insemination for single women. Of course, you need the access. And a lot of same-sex couples don't have access to assisted reproductive techniques. Even straight couples might have. They also often don't have the possibility to get funding for this. And you see, for single women, the situation is already better, but still you see countries in red. And for same-sex couples, the situation is still, less good. Transparenthood. We could also talk hours about this topic because there are so many things to discuss here. But in this map of ILGA Europe, transparenthood means you are recognized in a birth certificate with your right gender. So if you have a woman who gives birth and who goes into a transition and is afterwards in the papers a man, will be still in the birth certificate recognized as a woman with her former name. So it is a difficult situation then that your identity card states a name that is not representing the name in the birth certificate. And normally you can't change it. There are only 4 countries right now in the European Union who provide for this: Slovenia, Belgium, Sweden, and Malta. And there's only one country where birth certificates have the possibility to have not only female or male, yes, father and mother, but also non-binary people in the list. Foster care is something that is not mentioned in the rainbow map, but we think it's necessary to talk about foster care as well, because it is indeed a possibility for rainbow families to become a family. You see also there are a lot of countries that provide for this possibility, but there are still countries, and also in recent time, where the possibility to foster is worse for same-sex couples. For example, in Hungary, it is now not impossible, but still very difficult to achieve, because it's not a decision anymore of the experts of the youth care system, but it's a decision, a political decision. Yeah, so politicians have the final vote on a foster care procedure, and if you are LGBTIQ, you might have bigger problems to be accepted as foster parents. And then the last point, multi-parenting. This is something that is really in a lot of cases. Well, for example, a lesbian couple and a gay couple become together parents, and they share their parental responsibility. But at the moment, we don't have any possibility for more than 2 legal parents in Europe. We have such laws in the US, in several states there, and also in British Columbia in Canada. So you see, there are a lot of gaps, a lack of legislation concerning partnership rights and parenthood rights. And even though you have the possibility, the way of registration, the way of recognition is quite different in the member states. So, and you can imagine that this might be also a problem for your freedom of movement. It is. Let's step into the freedom of movement topic. The directive of 2004 says, EU citizens and their family members have the right to move freely and to live in another EU member state or country. And it covers certain terms like spouse, like registered partner, so who are family members, and direct descendants. But the question is still if rainbow families are covered. Yes, spouse is in general gender neutral, but countries may decide, well, spouse means straight and not same-sex spouse. And as long as we don't have a clear vote on this, or a clear definition on this, member states might say, well, spouse is okay, but a same-sex spouse for us is not a spouse. And direct descendants, here again, the question is if you are adopted or if you have 2 parents of the same sex. And we have still in 10 countries of the European Union, not any possibility for same-sex parents to become jointly parents. So what is about those families? Will they be recognized? And our experiences says, no, there are a lot of problems. For example, and this is the most relevant problem, the non-recognition of birth certificates. There is a real loss of legal familial ties because if you have, for example, a Spanish birth certificate stating 2 mothers. So in Spain, it is possible to have 2 mothers in a birth certificate, but you are from abroad. So you used your freedom of movement before, and it is very positive to have this possibility to go, for example, from Poland to Spain, yes, to become a family. But if you are a foreigner and you come from Poland, you need to be registered at first in your home country, that you will get a passport and an identity card for your child, and then you can apply for Spanish citizenship for your child. But in those cases where, for example, Poland or Bulgaria and other countries are involved, these countries won't recognize this birth certificate from Spain. They will say this birth certificate is invalid because it states two mothers. It is against the public order. It's against ethical provisions. So the whole procedure of transcription and the receival of documents like the passport will be stopped in this moment. And we have some cases where children remain, at least for a while, stateless. And others where this has stopped and they say, well, we can't recognize your birth certificate. Some countries will say, well, then you need to start a new adoption procedure for the non-biological parent. For example, between Belgium and Germany, because Germany doesn't know the direct recognition of birth certificates stating two mothers. Some countries know a partial recognition. They will say, well, there is a birth certificate stating two mothers. We don't know that, we don't accept that, but at least we will recognize the biological parent. But still, it will mean that there is a loss of legal familial ties. The child will lose one of its legal parents, and there will be travel difficulties. And when you really want to move to that country, you will lose your rights for other purposes as well. Then there is also, we know, cases of non-recognition of adoptions. Yes, it is in a lot of cases, these are adoptions after surrogacy arrangements, for example. And countries will say, well, you are adopted in country A, yes, in Germany, for example. Then you are mentioned also in the documents with two parents, and then you move to Denmark, and Denmark says, well, because it's a surrogacy, we can't recognize this. This is prohibited in Denmark. So your adoption won't be recognized here, and you will lose your legal ties again. In this case, you see here the picture of this couple from Scotland. They tried to become parents in France because one of them is French citizen. But French authorities said, well, we need a specific paper that confirms your adoption. Not only the adoption itself, but an additional document. But Scotland doesn't provide those documents. So French authorities ask for something that Scotland can't deliver. So here again, a legal limbo situation for this couple since 3 years. And what also happens in a lot of cases is that your marriages or civil unions are not recognized as such. For this couple, for example, they got married in the Netherlands because it is a Dutch-Czech couple. But when they come to Prague, where they live, this marriage was downgraded to a lower legal standard, to a civil union, and they lose the right, for example, to jointly adopt. And they have counted more than 100 provisions between marriage and civil unions that are different from each other, for example, also for property rights. So you see, you lose not only, those rights, yes, benefits like tax credits and inheritance rights. Sometimes you even lose as a child your parent. And we know of cases where this has really a tragic outcome. So what can be done? Difficult, yes, of course, the situation is quite difficult. And what we tried to do is to raise awareness. We have sent a very first petition in 2013 to Viviane Reding, the former commissioner. You see here the picture with our former vice president from Finland, Juha Jämsä. We shared a lot of experiences in seminars, in conferences. Even children raised their voice at conferences. Here is a picture of Derek Tips from Northern Ireland, who explained his situation with his two mothers in a big conference of Eurochild in Brussels some years ago. And on the picture below, you see our current president, Eleni Maravellia, who has sent her own petition. She has also had for a certain time a stateless child, and she asked for a solution. And this petition was discussed from 2018 to 2021. And in the meantime, we had a very interesting court decision, the so-called Komen case at the European Court of Justice in summer 2018. They had at the end the question if a spouse is also covering same-sex spouses. And the case, the judgment was, yes, member states need to recognize same-sex marriages contracted in another EU country, at least for the purpose of residence. This was quite important, but if we also say at least for the purpose of residence, means that for other purposes, this marriage isn't recognized. Yes, you can't move, you can move to another country, and the marriage will be then for this purpose recognized. But if you want to get, well, for example, tax credits, inheritance rights, and other rights as a couple, as a married couple in the host country, you don't have the right. So this was a very important judgment, but with a lot of gaps and unclear outcomes. And we see, and this is what I want to present you as well, that still this judgment is not really implemented in the national laws. So we continued to explain that the Komen case won't change a lot because it also doesn't cover families with children. So what happens with these children? And we published a case collection with a lot of those cases we explained before. We had a scientific report on the situation. We shared our expertise for the development of the LGBTI equality strategy, had some awareness presentations at different levels in the EU. We started an All Out campaign. All Out is a platform for LGBTI campaigns. And we have a lot of support here, for example, from the European Parliament's intergroups on LGBTI rights and children's rights. They wrote a joint letter to Commissioner Dalli. So there was some, well, pressure, I would say, but still on a lower level. Yes, so our means are not so big, but people understood that there is a problem that needs to be resolved. And we sent again some petitions last year in March with a new report, and I would tell you a little bit about the report too. And at the end, we had a positive resolution in the European Parliament last September, where the Parliament said we need to resolve the problems of cross-border problems for rainbow families. We need to ensure that children are treated equally to their peers. But let's come back to this scientific research, because it's really very impressive, I think, to see the obstacles to the free movement. So our experiences in a certain way were proved by the member states who had to answer to a survey of two professors, Alina Trifonide and Robert Wintermute. And this revealed, for example, that 15 countries within the European Union would accept marriages from abroad. So a lot of countries won't. Yes, so even we have the Komen case and same-sex spouses should be recognized. We have only 15 countries that would accept marriages from abroad for further purposes as residence permits. And you see some positive exceptions here. Croatia and Estonia are those countries who don't have marriage equality, but they would say, even we don't have this instrument, we would accept marriages from abroad. This is quite a good thing. But we have still 6 countries that would downgrade the marriages to civil partnerships with a lower standard of rights. And at least 6 countries would only give residence permits. So the minimum of the judgment of Komen, yes, more than residence rights we won't give. And in 2 cases, here, Bulgaria and Romania, those countries won't accept this in general. So we have problems here even to have this right achieved. Same-sex civil unions, it's also very interesting. Yes, 18 countries say we would accept unions from abroad, but we see here already on the left side, countries in Western Europe where we think, yes, these are countries with marriage equality, Ireland, France, and Portugal, and they don't accept civil unions from abroad for different reasons. Yes, France says, well, there are so many different types of civil unions, we can't accept them all, so we won't. In Portugal, the problem is that they implemented marriage equality in 2016 and they didn't have another instrument before. So when you now come with a civil union, they just don't know how to deal with it. And in Ireland, they stopped civil unions after the referendum for marriage equality in 2015. So there is no possibility anymore to have a civil union recognized. You see a lot of difficulties here, and even countries where we know that they say they would accept civil unions from abroad, for example, Belgium. In Belgium, there was a decision in 2007, it was a king's decision, that rainbow families who have a civil union will be recognized in Belgium as married if they don't have the possibility to get married in their own country. And there was a list of countries in 2007 that was never updated. So we have, for example, couples from Italy with a civil union contracted in 2015, and they come to Belgium, and Belgium says, well, it's not on the list. You can't be recognized as in a civil union because we don't have an civil union in Belgium, but we can't also upgrade you like other countries because you are not in the list. So we have still here problems, even, well, in general, the countries will say, well, normally, no, we don't have problems. There is no possibility. Yes, well, it should be done. But we see in reality that couples still have problems to be recognized. And for children, the situation, and this is also revealed by this study, is still more complicated because 8 countries here promise equal treatment for children, but at least 2 countries of these 8 countries, Poland and Ireland, we know that they have cases where children remain stateless because they don't accept birth certificates from abroad with 2 mothers in it. 2 countries admit, Greece and Slovakia, that they would only accept 1 biological parent. 2 countries, Romania and Croatia, won't allow joint parenthood, so nearly the same answer. And only 1 country within the whole study, and this is Sweden, says, well, we have some recognition problems, but we need to say Sweden is one of the best countries for the recognition in general, because they offer all possibilities from marriage equality to direct recognition of familial ties. So they admit something on a very high basis. And we know that Sweden is working on this. So here, for example, birth certificates from Spain are not recognized directly because in Sweden you have you need to have your medical treatment in a domestic clinic to have this direct recognition. If you are not in a domestic clinic, so if you have your treatment abroad, then you need to undergo a stepchild adoption procedure. But if you are already a recognized and established family in Spain, you should be also recognized in Sweden, and this is now resolved. Perhaps this year we will have a new law on this. What is to be expected? 2 points I would like to mention here, and then I'm ready. One thing is also very relevant. In December, we had the so-called Baby Sarah case, again at the European Court of Justice, and it clarified that member states must ensure the free movement in the EU for children and their same-sex parents. So it is beyond the Coleman case. It is the first case involving children, and it is a positive judgment. The decision, for example, says that direct descendants, yes, in the directive of free movement, also covers children of rainbow families. So now we have the proof that we are waiting for so long, that direct descendants is also a term for rainbow families. But we have still problems because a range of questions remain. I don't want to step too much into the details of this case, but it was again a birth certificate stating two mothers, and the question was at the end, will Bulgaria accept this birth certificate? And at the first stage they didn't, and so the child remained stateless and is still stateless because the issue isn't resolved right now. And this is something that is interesting for the near future, how this judgment will be implemented, if Bulgaria will be able to deliver or to hand out a passport to the child or not, and also what other countries will do in similar situations. We know some cases, similar cases, for example, in Poland. What will happen here? And we think, because it is a very strong judgment, and it will help rainbow families to at least avoid stateless children. But we will see how this will go on and how member states will react. And the second thing is also very important, and this is the last point I would like to mention, is the EU Commission. And one of the points in the LGBTIQ equality strategy is a legislative proposal for the mutual recognition of birth certificates. So at the end, the question is how we can accept birth certificates from abroad, for example, stating two mothers, even it might be against the national provisions. And there is now the plan to have a certain European certificate on parenthood that is an EU document, and member states just can't say, well, in our national provisions, we don't know co-motherhood, but it is EU law, and so it is valid, and we can proceed with the procedure of, yes, the administrative procedure, yes. So it is not that you stop the procedure because you have already an invalid birth certificate. No, you have a valid document, and then you can provide, for example, a health insurance card and a passport or identity card. However, and we know, so this proposal is expected for this autumn, and we had a very first meeting of ministers of justice at the beginning of the year in Lille in France. And here we know it is quite controversial, of course, this proposal, and only some countries would say at the moment that they would agree with such a proposal, while we need anonymity. So we are quite pessimistic that this proposal will come through. By the way, of course, at the end, member states might change their opinion, but this is really something we need to say at the end. It is a very necessary and very good effort to do so, and we feel here the backing of the EU, the backing of Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen, who stated in her State of the Union, a parent in one country is a parent in every country. So she is really backing our aims. But the situation is as it is. The member states are quite difficult, sometimes very reluctant when it comes to LGBTIQ issues. And even it is about children's rights, they might say at the end, no, we won't accept such a proposal. So it's really now to convince member states that we need a better situation in cross-border situations for rainbow families.